What's up everybody and welcome back to another video. I hope you enjoy this one because unlike what the title might suggest, we're zooming a little bit out of Doctor Who today to talk about the general community as a whole. I have made several videos since the announcement that Doctor Who is coming back and I wanted to do a little bit of a checkup. We knew how most people were responding by how they were talking on the day, but in the week following we got to hear more people's voices and more people's thoughts on everything to do with the matter, which was very interesting. But I want to talk about a bit more than that today. If any of you have been watching the channel for any period of time, you might be aware of the term I like to throw around. It's called the Fandom consensus, otherwise known as the fan intelligentsia, but I rarely ever actually sit down and explain it. What is this guy talking about? He says a lot of stuff, but does he really go into depth? Additionally, I am constantly thinking about stuff like this behind the scenes in ways that my views on topics can change rather frequently between videos, which must be rather confusing for you guys, the viewers. My thought on these things rarely remains stagnant. All of this combined is what is driving me to make this video, and at some point in the future I would like to make another video where I go through all of those said opinions that have shifted over the course of me making videos, which there are a lot of. But for now, let's stick to the topic at hand of fandom. The Doctor Who fandom is broken and may be beyond repair. I won't pretend this is a recent development because I've been interested in this idea of fandom since about the mid-2010s. That said, this particular development is particularly fascinating because it has caused a schism within the schism. Schismception, or perhaps even untempered. Now that reference sucks, my bad guys. So let's talk about right now. If you've been living under a rock, Doctor Who has been announced to be coming back to our screens in December 2026 for a Christmas special written by the kid Russell T Davies. This news has been controversial. If you watch my channel, you know that I liked it. And if you watched other channels, you know that I'm the only one who liked it. Don't worry guys, I'm not doing call outs, okay? Nor do I think that anyone is wrong or not entitled to their own opinion. In fact, I'm going to be turning the other direction and looking at the comment section, because strangely enough, maybe it's because my community is the best on earth, but my comment sections are surprisingly rational. And yes, even when people disagree, you guys can all back me up here. We have always tried for this channel to be the bastion of fair, good faith discussion within Doctor Who, and with a 1% margin of error, I feel like we succeeded. Even if I disagree with you guys in the comments, chances are I think you have a rational point of view, and I will always try to come at it with a fresh and open mind, and I'm lucky enough that you guys do the same for me, which is why I'm listening when I hear the same line get repeated over and over again. Stop me if you've heard this one before. Doctor Who is back, but this is actually a bad thing because even though Disney is gone, it's still RTD writing, which means it's objectively bad. Boom quotes. It's important to note that not everyone is saying this, and that the people who are saying messages similar to this all have unique variations on this and are not all saying this exact same thing. But for the sake of argument, let's say that this is what people, in inverted commas, are saying. Let's take a look at it. I both get and disagree with this line. Firstly, I understand the dissatisfaction with Russell T Davies as showrunner of Doctor Who. Flashback to me 3 years ago, and I was one of the first, if not the first, to be sounding the alarm bells and saying how he was the wrong fit for where the show needed to be at the moment. He was a sign we were going backwards and not forwards, and we needed someone different and someone new. This was not personal to Russell T Davies, and if you know anything about me, you know I love both him as a writer and I love a lot of the stuff that he's done. I simply fundamentally disagreed with the idea of going back to someone just because some people hadn't liked what happened with the new guy, the 13th Doctor. And in fact, I still think that this was the wrong decision. And if I could go back in time, well, you know, I would do a lot. But I also would have changed this. But I can't. I can't change time because that's impossible.
That's not how the Force works.
So instead of holding on to a grudge or resentment, I instead took things at face value value, and I surprisingly enjoyed the vast majority of new Doctor Who. Look, it's no secret that I haven't thought it was perfect. My first videos were 90% negative until Wild Blue Yonder came out, and I love that one, but generally speaking, what am I meant to lie? I did like it. I thought a lot of these episodes were pretty good. Boom, 73 Yards, Rogue, Dot and Bubble, Lux, The Well, Robot Revolution, Devil's Cord, Wild Blue Yonder, The Giggle. Hell, I know that everyone will hate me for this. I love Space Babies when it came out. I thought it was sweet and funny, and I liked it. Oh, but it was childish. Have some joy and whimsy in your heart. The main episodes I didn't like were the finales. Yeah, I mostly didn't like the overarching story stuff. In my experience, Doctor Who in general hasn't been good with that type of stuff in about a decade, maybe even a little bit more, and that trend, it just continued to be the case with both of these. I feel, additionally, I should mention that it would be silly of me not to pretend that my experience surrounding this new era isn't heavily biased and wrapped up in the fact that I was making YouTube videos. I was making YouTube videos for you guys the whole time while this era came out. I'd always been engaged with the community, but never to this extent, really at all, and it overall made a massive positive impact and made me enjoy some of these episodes a hell of a lot more. So while I can definitely understand the dissatisfaction with Russell T Davies that some might have, and for good reason, I cannot share in that because I genuinely enjoyed what he's done with the program. Surely you can see how, from my perspective, why that wouldn't be a deal breaker. Secondly, building off this point, something I disagree with is how personal it has gotten. I talked about this in another video, but my biggest pet peeve with the internet in general is the inclination some users have to inflate every situation's worth to the most important thing ever, usually by virtue of some moral crusade. Russell T Davies is an objectively evil person because he is sexist and racist and fucking terrible, and if you like anything that he's done, you're exactly the same. He is just a guy. He wrote some television that you didn't like. He also wrote some television that you did like. He wrote some television you loved as well. Does that count for something? No. Apparently those feelings of love are easily brushed over, and actually all the bits that we liked were done by accident and can be attributed to other people, but all the bits we hate were his fault! Regardless of whether you like him or not, that is your prerogative. What I can't stand are the moralizers. This should be a fun, low-stakes topic to talk about. When you bring in real, serious problems, it is no longer a light topic or a light conversation. It is a heavy topic, and we got spaces for heavy topics. You don't need to bring it in to every aspect of life, no matter how righteous you feel. Sometimes it's not appropriate, okay?
Fine.
You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. It's always been a tragic quote, and it is even more tragic to see it play out in real time, regardless of whether or not you liked it or not. And it is fine to like or dislike any episode that you want. Surely you must realize that he was trying. They have always been trying. There are real people on the other end of this, and while you don't owe them anything, when it comes to your time or your money, you could help not to be cruel or needlessly rude. And thirdly, well, this one's a little different because, again, depending on who is saying the line, the implication is different. The first implication might be that Doctor Who is always going to come back. It is never in any risk of really being gone forever, and so we should demand the changes that we want from it, lest it remain not to our liking. That's the more optimistic implication. The second is that Doctor Who should be cancelled and never come back. Depending on who is saying the line, it could have two meanings, and I don't really like either of these two meanings. The idea that Doctor Who is indestructible probably should have gone out of fashion a couple years ago. While yes, it has gotten out of dire straits time and time again, after the reality war, it really was looking done. And now that it is back, quote unquote, do not think that it is on solid ground. We are not even on one knee. We were on one knee. We are now on no knees. This is the final round. Bell's about to ring. Underdog season. We are an inch away from being done. So realistically, we're in no position to be playing silly buggers right now. Yes, I would love it if Vince Gilligan became showrunner of Doctor Who, or Tony Gilroy, or Jack Thorne, or Dream Scenario, someone entirely new. I would love that. Are you kidding me? I would be over the moon. You'll be seeing videos from me daily talking about Doctor Who is about to take on the world. We're back, people. But do you see my point here? This isn't realistic. It would be awesome. There are several people who I would love to be Doctor Who showrunner, but right now, Doctor Who is not in that position. It's not in that position to do a big overhaul. It is in the position to do one episode. Production teams are not scratching at the bit to do Doctor Who at the moment. In fact, from what I hear, it's looking rather poisonous. We either do it with what we have now, or we don't do it at all. Best case scenario, we keep the momentum long enough so that we can pass the torch onto someone new once a new deal has been broken. But if you have no momentum, you have no show. That's not an option. Which leads me on to talking about Doctor Who's cancellation. I don't want the show to be cancelled. I'm wearing my heart on my sleeve here, but I really don't want this show to be cancelled. I like watching this show. I've talked about this before, but Doctor Who really isn't like any other television program, because even though all things come and go, and even doctors and producers and whole teams come and go, Doctor Who is different because Doctor Who is special. I wanted to stop here for a second to expand on this. Even though I don't feel I really need to, I just want to. Let's look at The Simpsons. Some people call the later seasons of that show Zombie Simpsons, and I don't think they mean it in a nice way. To be fair, I agree with them. I don't like the art, I don't like the voices, I don't find it funny, and I imagine that it's similar to how some people view Doctor Who nowadays. The difference between these two though is obvious. The Simpsons is stuck with the same characters forever, never aging or progressing. There really are only so many stories that you can tell in Springfield. Doctor Who, on the other hand, not only do the main cast of Doctor Who change fairly frequently, both on screen and off, it always has the potential to massively change things around. It really doesn't take all that. In fact, it's built in to the premise of the show. A lot of people take for granted that if Doctor Who were cancelled, it would be guaranteed to come back, but that really is not the case. And even if it was, say Doctor Who left and came back 10 years from now, your life, my life, will have transformed so drastically that would we really be able to appreciate it? It potentially wouldn't be made for you or I, which means that we either waited or didn't wait for nothing. We sacrificed it for nothing, and there is no guarantee. By the way, that's something I want to reiterate. Doctor Who can always make a comeback, and if you want it to take a break, this is it. This is the break. It's going to be ages till the next episode, and even longer till the next series. If it is barely visible in the public consciousness, then surely that serves the same purpose as it being cancelled. The effect is still the same. You're waiting for it to come back and get good. Unless this is all about vindication and revenge, which if it is, then maybe you should think about that. What an interesting springboard, but I'll leave you all with that. Back to the video. The point of this program that has lasted over 60 years of real life time, the point is that you pass it from generation to generation. It is the torch. Yes, some parts you won't like, and eventually you'll outgrow it entirely, but hopefully you leave it better than how you found it so that the next generation can pick it up and go on to do the same. That's the spiritual journey of life played out on a micro scale in the form of a silly but wonderful British science fiction TV program. So while I understand the belief that some people have had for the past 40 years, really, that Doctor Who is past its prime and should be put down like a dog for its own sake, I suppose, I fight it with every ounce of my being. I fundamentally disagree with it. Doctor Who has the unique ability to entirely renew and regenerate itself. It can rise from the ashes like a phoenix at any time. Of course, there is a limit to this, and at some point in the future, modern Doctor Who as we know it will certainly end. And there isn't a guarantee that it would come back anytime soon. But that doesn't mean we should cheer that on. We're supposed to be fans, aren't we? What is a fan? Asks the DW fan. It's time we talk about the nature of fandom. And I'm not talking the wiki page. Jokes aside, this portion of the video took a Herculean effort because of my prior attempts to record this. I just could not stop myself from yapping away about rather pointless stuff, to be honest. I wouldn't say it was completely irrelevant or boring, at least to me. But if I played a little bit of it to you now, you would agree that it's better off not being in the video. What? You waiting for me to play it? My dumbass took things back to the 80s, and John Nathan Turner's approach to Doctor Who, which turned it from a Saturday tea time British institution into a show obsessed with a Saturday tea time British institution. What's interesting about this particular era of the show is how every common misconception of what Doctor Who is all came from these doctors in particular. For example, even the idea that Doctor Who is an inherently inconsistent show. Well, yes, the modern series is very inconsistent and can drastically range in quality from episode to episode. Doctor Who was not always like this. In fact, for its first 14 seasons, Doctor Who is probably one of the most consistent television shows of all time. It is only in the 80s that these drastic shifts in quality were introduced, and then they became a mainstay forever. Entirely normalized. Earthshock and Time Flight, Enlightenment and the King's Demons, Androzani and the Twin Dilemma. Even the idea that Doctor Who was always a cheap show on a budget, it really wasn't. In fact, looking back to 60s Doctor Who, even in its earliest days, it had a rather reasonable budget, all things considered. Its first episode got enough for a revamp, and a lot of these sets were rather convincing. Of course, we look back now at the Tombs of the Cybermen, but these are not only quite impressive for the time, they are actively better than the sets of the late 80s. Yes, Doctor Who looked better in the 1960s than it did in the 80s. Doctor Who only really started having budgetary issues, you guessed it, after season 14, and so on and so forth. I more or less yapped away about the history of it all and blah 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 blah. How is that really relevant to anything that's going on right now? So I cut to the chase of it and I asked, is Fandom even real? What? Like, what do you mean by that? This guy, man. The DW fan 91 saying Fandom isn't real. Has this guy lost his mind? Perhaps I have, but let's look back at the clues, my dear Watson, because did you see what I missed? It's important to note that not everyone is saying this, and that the people who are saying messages similar to this all have unique variations on this and are not all saying this exact same thing. But for the sake of argument, let's say that this is what people, in inverted commas, are saying.
Well, you don't see it?
Don't worry guys, I'm not doing call-outs, okay? Nor do I think that anyone is wrong or not entitled to their own opinion. I'm not generalizing, people. I'm not generalizing because I can't generalize. And instinctively, you know that too. You would notice if I did generalize, because I wouldn't exactly be telling the truth then, would I? The truth that all of these so-called widely held opinions are actually all held by individuals who all have different variations on them, and they don't even actually agree with each other. Have you ever heard of the Goomba fallacy? It's when you hear two contradictory opinions being said by who you assume one person, making you think that said person is an idiot because they're holding contradictory points of views when actually they don't, and you just think that they do. This is Fandom. Fandom is just one big Goomba fallacy. There might be superficial overlap in opinion, but everything from how they present it to what they do about it to even how they really interact and think about it on a deeper level is so different. There really is not many reasons to clump them together in the first place. Therefore, Fandom isn't real? Question mark? Perhaps it's better to simply think of it as an audience. The Doctor Who audience. The insert here audience. Because once you split that audience up, it fractionalizes it into smaller and smaller clumps and eventually results in decay. Which brings us back to the Fandom consensus. Yeah, I told you I'd bring it back. It all comes back around. The Fandom consensus is the response to this. It unites the fandom, quote unquote. It plasters over all of those cracks and tries to pull us all together like a chain of flowers, or maybe like the Borg. I've never really liked it much because it quashes individual opinion and makes all conversations boring because everyone says the same cookie cutter copy and paste regardless of if they've even watched the episodes or not. But perhaps I was wrong. Perhaps it is a necessary evil. Perhaps there does need to be some unity in the fandom. Never mind, fandom consensus is that Doctor Who should be cancelled. I suppose this is the end goal of fandom. Killing itself. And as you can probably guess, I'm still figuring this one out. It's a bit of a head scratcher, this topic, but I think I've really sunk my teeth into it. Maybe I'll give it another crack in a few months or so. What do you guys think? Anyway, let me end on a separate note. Doctor Who is divided, and lots of people are preying on its downfall. The question of why is interesting, but can be rather intuitively figured out. In layman's terms, a lot of people didn't like the direction this new series went, and they also didn't like the direction the last series went. And separate to that, the direction the one before that went wasn't as popular too. So basically, for a long time, Doctor Who hasn't been the show a lot of people have wanted it to be. And in fact, it's been so long that a lot of those people have grown up and become real adults. Perhaps they've outgrown the show naturally. Perhaps they think the show simply got shit. Either way, they're gravitating away. And I think that when you're gravitating away from something, it's easier to ask it to stop than for you to let it go yourself. And also sometimes you feel it genuinely should stop because you're angry at it for wasting your damn time. I can't help but find this a bit sad and relatable. It hits way too close to home. We have all had those feelings of outgrowing stuff and throwing stuff away. It's too real, man. And tell me, is it just that time in my life? Or is Doctor Who going through it as well? I have so much more to say on this topic, and I'm sure I will in this year-long gap. I mean, we're gonna have to pass the time somehow. But let's tackle one last question before we wrap up for the day. Why do I disagree? And by that, why do I not mind that Rusty Davies is staying? Or in fact, that I think it's actually probably a good thing. Why do I like that Doctor Who is still going? And why am I interested in why other people are saying the opposite? It's natural curiosity, I suppose. Anyway, moving backwards. I like Rusty Davies, and I think he can do good Doctor Who. I think it's fair enough to give him another chance because I like to root for people when they're the underdog. I like to root for them even more, actually. I remember the other day I was talking about what I'd like him to do as a last, probably mini series, and it just seemed far more exciting now that I knew it was going to have to be different. I mean, it is going to have to be different. It is impossible to go around business as usual, and when people are backed into a corner when it's do or die time, they are hungry. And the worst case scenario is that we're just back at the oh it's over again square, but with an extra series about it. I'll take that. If it comes out and it still fails, it is what it is. Of course, I don't think people are wrong when they say I would like a new showrunner of Doctor Who, and some people were calling me a dickhead for jokingly saying that, well, the options are between him and Pete McTeague, which is true. But realistically, I just don't think it's on the cards at the moment. Just give it a little bit of time. Maybe don't be so harsh on it. Just because it will soon be in production does not mean it's the healthiest it's ever been. Perhaps this is just another case of realism versus idealism. Oh my god, here he goes again! I hope this video made any semblance of sense to you. If not, I'll try again next time. Love you, bye.